إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. As to what follows. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome back to another lesson from the Islamic Awakening series. And we continue with different groups, part 5. And this week there is a few matters relating to Jamaat al-Tabligh. And this is a group which there's been a lot of words about regarding some of the truth, some of it falsehood, and inshallah Azza wa Jal, we will try and extract that which is good and present it through the words of the Shaykh rahmatullah alayh, and also get that which is bad and correct it. For those that don't know, alhamdulillah, I do have experience with Jamaat al-Tabligh, and so I can talk from first-hand experience where there's good points and where there's bad points, and how that's looked at in the greater scheme of things from the perspective of being part of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, etc. The question I was asked, point number 102, and we are on page 248. I am part of the Tabligh Jamaat in this country, but I have heard that this group commits certain mistakes. Please advise me, should I continue to remain with them or should I leave them? In truth, the Jamaat al-Tabligh has a strong influence in rectifying the condition of people, for there are many disbelievers who have come to believe, and many evildoers who have become upright because of the da'wah efforts of this group. So we see the first thing that the Shaykh rahmatullahi alayhi does is he mentions a good point, a positive point, in order for there to be inshallah a means of benefit there. The members of this group are known for their good manners, kind speech, smiling faces, and other such good qualities for which they should be commended. Okay, so when you speak about a particular matter, and a matter which may cause for some people sensitivity, harm, they may be defensive straight away, one of the ways to ease their affairs is to mention their good points, and we need to be just when dealing even with our enemies, even with the people that we don't like at all, people that we're fighting with, we need to be just. How about then, how important is it then that we're just with, subhanAllah, other Muslims? But then the Shaykh mentions, but there are 2 points that work to discredit them. Number 1, many of them lack knowledge. You will find that one of them dedicates himself to a single book from the books of the scholars, and although we hold that book in high esteem, encouraging people to read it, it is Riyadh al-Salihin, we must point out that they only read that single book as if there were no other beneficial book in the world. I do not depict all of them as being of this description, but still I am referring to the majority among them. They need to have knowledge, they need to have knowledgeable people among them to teach them so that they can reach the level of being upon sure knowledge. This is definitely one of the criticisms of Jamaat al-Tabligh, that they lack in knowledge, even with the good points that we mentioned. They lack in knowledge, and this is the general rule amongst them. And as I mentioned, I'm talking also from personal experience with being amongst them. Unfortunately, the people that don't even aspire to seek knowledge because it's not instilled in them the importance of knowledge, even though it's one of the acts that they talk about of Sahaba radiallahu anhum, except that they keep their knowledge at a very low level. They keep their knowledge, for example, as a focus on the last and surah of the Quran. They keep their focus, like the mudhakarat, on things like tahara, and things like salah only. They don't get into many other matters. They don't get into matters concerning the study of the Quran, the study of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from a fiqh perspective. They don't get into the study of Aqidah. They don't get into the study of branches of Aqidah. They don't get into the study of Islamic history. There's a lot of things that they don't get into the study of. And because of that lack of knowledge, they fall into a lot of mistakes. Knowledge, dear brothers and sisters, is something extremely important. And the only way you will know your direction forward as a Muslim is through knowledge. That's the only way. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed so much importance on the people of knowledge and raise their status. يَرْفَعَ لَهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases the believers in degrees, and especially, specifically from amongst the believers who? The people of knowledge are mentioned in this verse. On top of the general believers, the ones specified are, and the ones mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here are the scholars. So a person needs to look at the scholars with high esteem. Why? What's so different about the scholars? It's the fact that they have knowledge. What can you do with knowledge? You can not only benefit yourself, but you can benefit others. You know right from wrong. And this is the difference between a alim and a abid. And you find that many of those that attribute themselves to Jamaat al-Tabligh, again with all of the good points that they have, is that the majority of them, they stick towards the ubbad as opposed to the ulama. They stick towards those who are worshippers. They worship Allah, they pray Qiyam al-Layl, they attend the masjid, they do a lot of dhikr, etc., etc., etc. But you don't find them studying and becoming learned people. Someone may ask, isn't that good? Of course it's good. Of course it's good, without doubt it's good. But what's better than a abid is actually a alim. And the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, فَضْلُ الْعَالِمِ عَلَى الْعَابِدِ كَفَضْلِ عَلَى أَدْنَاكُمْ. The difference or the virtue of the scholar over the worshipper is like the difference between myself and the lowest of you. And imagine the degree between the lowest amongst the companions of the Prophet ﷺ and the Prophet ﷺ himself. hayhat. How far is the difference between the two? And the Prophet ﷺ is likening that. Obviously it's not literal now, because no one's going to get to the status of the Prophet ﷺ. But the likeness of that is like the scholar over the abid. You know the famous story about the man who killed 99 men. When he went to ask the first one, who did he go to? He went and asked a abid, a person who worshipped Allah Azza wa Jal, but without much knowledge. And this person ended up giving him the wrong answer, and so he was killed in consequence of it. But then when he asked the scholar, that scholar gave him the right answer, and it led to his tawbah being accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the alim, the scholar, has great virtue in Islam, and is someone who's favored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if he's sincere, and this is he's given a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his knowledge. مَنْ يُرِدِ لَهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. Whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants goodness for, He gives him an understanding of the religion. So the scholar has a very high standing in Islam, and one of the sad things regarding Jamaat al-Tabligh in general is that they don't place much knowledge on ilm, on themselves learning. And so this is one of their downfalls, and that's what leads them to make many mistakes, whether it's in aqidah, or it's in fiqh, or it's in manhaj, or it's in matters of bid'ah, or if it's in using narrations which are not suitable, etc. This is what leads them, and so if they were to fix that problem, they would find much goodness in their dealings. Number two, they leave this country, talking about Saudi at that particular time, they leave this country traveling to lands where the leaders of their group reside, and we have heard that those leaders follow many deviant practices, and so they are in need of someone to clarify for them their misguidance. It is not scattered reports that have come to us, but over and over again, many people have reported to us that the leaders of this group follow many deviant practices. I'm not sure about now, but I do know, obviously when the borders are open, that many people, when they go for 4 months in the Tabligh Jama'ah, they go to places like India. I don't know about the heads of them now, but definitely in the past, and very well possibly now, but I'm not sure, so I can't say for certain, that there were grave mistakes that would happen with some. Some of them they would call to shirk, like making dua to the awliya. Some of them would do practice of shirk, like seeking help with magicians through the ta'aweed and matters of sahar. All of this taban is not allowed. There were many who would promote many innovations, many acts of bid'ah, which we know is rejected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there was definitely a process of glorifying those people who are against the way of or who are not on the proper way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam through proper knowledge and actions, even though they may be ubad, they may have good akhlaq, etc., except that there is definitely deficiency in that regard. now, Allahu Alam, but definitely before. One of the Sheikh, he mentioned that they stick to one book, which is Riyadh al-Salihin, and this is mainly the Arab ones. Mainly the Arab people from Jamaat al-Tabligh, they stick to Riyadh al-Salihin, but the more famous book is Fadail al-A'mal, which unfortunately is absolutely full of weak narrations and even fabricated narrations and fabricated statements and even matters which, ayadun billah, are actually part of shirk. Then there was a revised one, Muntakhab al-Hadith, and again, this is much better طبعا than Fadail al-A'mal, but nevertheless, there are still weak narrations in it, and somewhat more problematic than that is actually using these narrations they read and they left. They read the hadith and no one's there to explain it. There's been a few times where I've been sitting and taban in the masjid after the salah, they read the hadith, and people, they get up and they walk away. But I can guarantee you, because some of them were high level student of knowledge explanation needing a hadith. It wasn't just something said and left. It wouldn't just be something, for example, you post on Facebook or you post send to a friend's WhatsApp group, because no one will be able to understand the hadith. It requires a lot of background knowledge and how to apply it. So the person read it, and it was at a place where many people work around. So there were hundreds of people, mashallah, there, and it was said and it was left. Tayyib. What's going to happen to the people who hear that and walk away? Either they're going to be confused or they're not going to care, and both of them are bad. But rather, it needs to be explained. Who is able to explain it? You need at least a decent level student of knowledge. And the person who was reading it was just any one of the brothers who got up and picked up the book and read. And this is one of the things that causes problems. Jayyid. In general, though their manners and efforts, the group's members have a positive effect on others, for which they should be commended. One of the things that I personally feel that Jamaat al-Tabligh, they get overpraised for is their akhlaq. Again, I was with, I know Jamaat al-Tabligh quite personally, and I know many people from Jamaat al-Tabligh, and without doubt, they have many good traits, but I do put their good akhlaq down to them being from the subcontinent, the vast majority of them. The subcontinental brothers, in their tabi'ah, in their nature, is that they're more humble, they're more calm, etc. And you'll find that the Arab Tablighis, they don't have the same traits. The Arab Tablighis, the majority of them, they're much more aggressive, they're much more rough, they're much more louder. They're like your typical person there, and your typical person there. And from that culture they brought it in, and from that culture they brought it in. And this is not something, again, halal or haram. This is their tabi'ah, this is their nature. Taban, as long as they don't transgress the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no issue with it. But sometimes I feel, again, with all the good points that they have, sometimes when Jamaat al-Tabligh as a whole get overpraised, because the vast majority of brothers, they come from the subcontinent for the akhlaq perspective. But I've met many brothers, for example, that say, the Salafis were rough. And you get the Salafi who's an Arab, he's going to act, his tabi'ah, his nature is in accordance to how he is. It's going to do him being a Salafi or not. Because I find the same Salafi brothers who are from the subcontinent, they're exact same as the Tablighi brothers that are from the subcontinent. They're both, mashallah, calm and humble and smiley and relaxed, and they sit in attentiveness listening to the Sheikh, etc. You find the same here, the same there. And you find the same Arabs here, the same Arabs there. So sometimes I find that it's a little bit of an overpraise, but definitely there's a lot of good traits. And you find even some of the Arabs that are constantly around brothers from the subcontinent. You'll be like one Arab around, for example, 10 brothers that are from the subcontinent, he will start to pick up their traits. Again, not because he's a Tablighi, but because you pick up the traits of those around you, and that's who he's surrounded by. The same way you find a person from the subcontinent that's around Arabs, and he's one subcontinental brother around, for example, 10 Arabs, he will start to act like them. There remains one issue that pertains to the brothers of this group, Jamaat al-Tabligh. They think that revealed texts that mention the virtues of performing jihad in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala apply to them. This is not a correct understanding, for verses and a hadith referring to performing jihad with the disbelievers and not going out to perform da'wah in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is true that going out to perform da'wah falls under the general meaning of going out in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the way of Allah, fi sabilillah, has two meanings. One that is general, one that is specific. those verses that mention the virtues of martyrs, of the sword, of the spending for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, refer to the jihad which involve fighting the enemies of Islam. And this goes back to the lack of knowledge. And this goes back to the lack of knowledge where things are mistakenly applied that are not meant to be there. So you find the brothers from Jamaat Tabligh, they give virtues to khuruj. And they talk about al-khuruj fi sabilillah, and they talk about verses in the Quran or in the Sunnah that talk about fi sabilillah. And then they apply it on themselves when they go for khuruj and they sleep in the masjid. This is a problem. Why? Because all of those verses that talk about al-khuruj fi sabilillah in the Quran or in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, it's talking about jihad fi sabilillah in terms of the fighting. It's not talking about going and giving da'wah. Yes, going and giving da'wah is rewarding. Struggling against your nafs is rewarding. But is it that which is referred to in the Quran and Sunnah? No, it's not. No, it's not. When you talk about the reward for going out, or the dust that gets on the feet, or time spent, or a night spent, etc., that's all talking about fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not going to a particular masjid. So that's a result of not having the knowledge that's required to understand these texts, and then that becomes widespread, unfortunately. There are other criticisms that will come with us, but these were two main ones in that particular answer. The next one, point 103, there is much and widespread criticism of Jamaat al-Tabligh, despite the plain fact that it is a group that has a very prominent role in da'wah efforts. Instead of warning against this group, please advise its members so that they can learn to perform da'wah in the correct manner. And this is a much question. This is a much question that's looking for the positive outcome. And this is how the believer should be. The believer should be, what is the best outcome for these individuals? What's the best way for us to learn and for us to be able to teach others if they're making mistakes? It shouldn't be, how can I smash those people? How can I put those people down? How can I get those people off the manhaj? This is not the way of Ahl-Sunnah. The way of Ahl-Sunnah is, how can we bring people in? How can we rectify the affairs of people? What's the best way to go about it? The Shaykh rahimahullah answers, there is much talk nowadays about the different groups and about which among them is best. Much of that talk centers on Jamaat al-Tabligh. In my view, it is a group that has much goodness to it, and from amongst the different groups I know of, it has the most profound influence. Many disbelievers have come to believe, and many sinners have turned to righteousness through Jamaat al-Tabligh's efforts. This is without doubt true. How many people have become religious because of someone coming and visiting them, inviting them to the masjid, or in the streets going to them. And I know many brothers who have gone to extremely far and remote places in Australia, very far and remote places in Australia, where the original Afghans that came, the Kamalis, their offspring live, who unfortunately have nothing from Islam left except for La ilaha illallah. Their wives are non-Muslims, their children are non-Muslims, or if they say, oh yeah, we're Muslim, again, all they know is, if they know it, La ilaha illallah. There's no salah, there's no connection, there's no Muslim community there, there's no masjid, there's no Quran, there's nothing. All they know is La ilaha illallah, if they know anything. So Jamaat al-Tabligh, Jazakumullah khairan, they actually go to many of these places and they go and try and give da'wah to these brothers and establish something for them over there and visit them thereafter. So definitely da'wah efforts of the brothers in Jamaat al-Tabligh in terms of going out and calling to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, definitely there's a lot of virtue in what they've done and a lot of goodness, which we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards them for immensely. But the members of Jamaat al-Tabligh are in need of knowledge. I have been told that some of them do not want to seek knowledge or study it deeply, and they give the excuse that profound studying is only for the scholars. This is a mistake for which I criticize them. Now, this is true. That the scholars, they study, and we don't need to study. As long as scholars we know the basics, that's enough. And this is very dangerous, this mentality, because it stops you from a lot of good, and it makes you fall into a lot of issues. A person doesn't know the severity of something until they know the reality of it. If I don't know the reality of something, I don't understand how severe it can become, how detrimental it can become. And you look at the example of children. You get a child, for example, playing with matches or playing with a lighter. They don't understand the consequence of their actions. So they don't understand it could burn them, it could burn their family home. They don't understand it could burn their car. They don't understand what that fire could do. To them, it's like a little match or a little lighter. It's something simple. They don't understand the consequences. And similarly, for you as an adult, If you don't understand the consequences of a particular matter, you don't understand how severe it is, you don't go about it the right way. When we don't know how bad shirk is, we don't know how bad bid'ah is, we don't know how bad major sins are, we don't know how bad giving fatwa without knowledge is, we don't know how bad these things are, we end up falling into the mistakes very easily. And so and this is not something that I blame Jamaat al-Tabligh for, but it's a result of what Jamaat al-Tabligh promotes. The majority of them anyway. I'm generalizing to make it easy, but obviously there are those from Jamaat al-Tabligh that promote knowledge and promote the seeking of knowledge, etc. We're talking generally about what's common amongst most of them. I've heard many brothers who, when it comes to major sins, be very lenient with it, very lenient with major sins, for in their what they believed was some goodness to come out of it. But the fatwa that you gave, firstly, you're not a person who's qualified to give fatwa. Secondly, you just spoke about a major sin, and inna Allah tayyibun la yaqulu illa tayyiba. Allah is pure and accepts that which is pure. So for you to achieve something which is something which is a good outcome in an impure way, then this is something not acceptable in the Sharia, generally speaking. You also are now misguiding this person, because this person, he's going to think that you, because you're religious, you have a beard, you have a thobe, you go to the masjid all the time, that maybe you're someone qualified to take off, and you're not qualified to take off. There are a lot of harms, but I've heard it happen clearly right in front of me, from brothers from Jamaat al-Tabligh on many occasions, unfortunately. So we need to be very careful. We need to be very careful with the lack of knowledge part and the issues that it raises. Now, even matters of shirk, matters of rejecting even parts of the sunnah, which is something strange to understand. Okay, but clearly rejecting the sunnah, for the statement of fulan or fulan, when the hadith is right in front of you, these types of things are quite dangerous. Matters of aqidah, these things are quite dangerous. Certain statements and principles, like we don't give da'wah to non-Muslims, we give da'wah only to Muslims. These are quite dangerous. Okay, these statements are quite dangerous because they go against the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and inshallah they're excused for ignorance, but definitely how do we get rid of them? There needs to be a great importance placed on seeking knowledge. News has reached us that the leaders of this group who live in certain countries are upon the deviance in their aqidah beliefs. If this holds true, then we must warn against them and limit their da'wah to within the borders of our country, so that its influence is not by those leaders, making sure it is performed according to the manner which is legislated in Islam. At any rate, I think that there is much good in Jamaat al-Tabligh, though they are not free from shortcomings. And if news about its leaders who live outside of our country is true, then we must warn against them. Alhamdulillah, we have scholars and righteous people in our country, so that there is no need for people to leave it and consult scholars that live abroad, especially in this case because the scholars and leaders of the said group are said to be deviant in their beliefs. Again, definitely there is a level of misguidance amongst many of those who were attributed to Jamaat al-Tabligh previously. As I mentioned, now Allahu Alam who the leaders are and what their manhaj is and what they're upon, Allahu Alam. But again, one of the ways that can be rectified is through a great importance from Jamaat al-Tabligh and those around Jamaat al-Tabligh and those advising Jamaat al-Tabligh to seek knowledge from its foundational principles all the way up to its branches. And the more that they say, the more that they'll be enlightened, inshallah, and the more that their efforts will be proper, upright, and the mistakes avoided. From where did Islam proceed from? Was it not from these lands? Iman will return to these lands, and by this I mean Al-Madinah, because these lands represent the beginnings of Islam and the end of Islam on this earth. The Prophet ﷺ said, expel the Jews and the Christians from the Arabian Peninsula. During the sickness that led to his death, the Prophet ﷺ also said, expel the polytheists from the Arabian Peninsula. And in a hadith that is related by Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, I will indeed remove the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula until I leave only Muslims to remain in it. Why did the Prophet ﷺ specify the Arabian Peninsula in regard to this matter? He ﷺ did so to point out the importance of the peninsula and that it should remain pure from having two religions coexist in it. the religion of Islam and any of the religions of disbelief. Part of, or maybe part of the reason the Sheikh mentions that is because some people actually, they end up giving virtue to places in India or Pakistan or Bangladesh or those surrounding regions because of their connection with Jamaat al-Tabligh, and they actually believe that that's where you need to go and learn and study. That's where you need to get your iman from. If you haven't done that, then your iman is always incomplete. Again, this is something dangerous, and it comes through a lack of knowledge. It comes through a lack of knowledge, because how do you get away from a place which is the purest place on the face of the earth, yani Mecca, and then Al-Madinah, and then a place where the Dajjal himself cannot enter to seek sanctity outside of it? Or you have, alhamdulillah, yani, there places which are more blessed in terms of the virtue of the salah, etc., and still you move away from it. How does that make sense for you to leave this virtue for a virtue somewhere else? You are definitely allowed to leave Mecca and Medina if there's a purpose. You can go for study, you can go for jihad, you can go for da'wah. There are many, you go visit someone. There are definitely reasons for a person to leave Mecca and Medina. But when you place other places as being more virtuous or being more preferred because of their virtue over Mecca and Medina, this is when it starts to become extremely problematic. And many brothers unfortunately did fall into that trap. Some even to the extent where they made a condition that you go for 4 months khuruj before you even go to Hajj. When you make a condition like that you have to go spend 4 months in these places, and some groups from Jamaat al-Tabligh, they would go to other than Nizam al-Din and India and Bangladesh and Pakistan for their khuruj, for their 4 months. They'll go to other places, and then they will be reprimanded that no, you've done something wrong, as if you haven't, as if you prayed outside of its prayer time. It's not a condition. Even if I was to go for 4 months, it's not a condition that I go to these places in order for my deen and my da'wah to be accepted. Why is it a condition, and why that much significance? So this is where it becomes somewhat problematic, where special virtue is given to places that hasn't been given that virtue in the Sharia of Islam. And this, again, with knowledge, this will be rectified, inshallah. It is not the sunnah to specify how long one should go out to perform da'wah. Point 104, 3 days, 40 days and 4 months. What is the ruling for traveling for these periods of time with the Jamaat Tabligh? I hope that the answer is very clear, because a lot of people, when they want to criticize, they criticize incorrectly. When you want to criticize any person or any group, you will need to talk about it from an academic and Islamic perspective. And even when we speak about it from an academic or Islamic perspective, the rules and the principles of academia, and especially Islamic academia, need to be applied. A lot of people, they like to talk emotionally, and those emotions usually lead to problems. And how many problems do we see happen between families, between friends, between organizations, between masajid, whatever it may be, because of emotions being in place and not proper Islamic academic principles. This is what needs to be applied. And one of the common complaints or criticisms that comes against the Jamaat al-Tabligh is the time period. Is the time period that they specify for khuruj, and it's usually truth mixed with falsehood. And inshallah, after the answer of the Shaykh, we'll add on to that the answer is clear, inshallah. The Shaykh rahimahullah says, as far as I know, there is no basis in the sunnah for going out to perform da'wah or to visit brothers for a set period of time, regardless of whether that period is 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, or otherwise. But the people who organize trips for a set number of days or months do so in order to organize their time and their trips, and so that their affairs do not become one of chaos. So what they are doing in this regard is not considered as a goal in and of itself, but rather as a means of reaching their goal, of organizing their time. Therefore, I see no harm in what they are doing, as long as they do not consider their practice to be an act of worship, thinking that going out for exactly 40 days, for instance, is from the religion. I'm not sure how it comes up on the screen, but this is my right hand, not my left hand. Now we always have to specify that and remind the people, because usually you always find somewhere that someone says, why would the Shaykh of the student of knowledge or the Da'i drink with his left hand? Just in case. This answer, subhanallah, is actually full of knowledge. Number one, the Shaykh, he begins with adab, And he says, there's nothing that I know that's in the Sunnah that talks about specifying dates. That's number one. There's nothing that I know. And this is very important because how many people they think because they haven't heard it, it's not true. La, it's fake. La, it doesn't exist. We should never speak without knowledge, and we should never be hasty to reply without knowledge. What do we need to do? What's upon us? What's our responsibility? If we don't know, go research, go ask the appropriate people, and then inshallah know the answer. And if you don't know, you simply say, Allahu Alam. The ones that go out, the Shaykh says, then this, if it's a matter to organize their affairs, then it's not an issue. It's not an issue if it's just something that we put in place for administrative purposes, for organizational purposes. There's no issue. If we say, okay, everyone, in order to achieve this, for example, to make our lives easier, we'll just put 3 days a month, 40 days a year, and 4 months in a lifetime. Just something which, inshallah, we found can be beneficial for taskiyat and nerves, for not being too hard on your family, whatever the excuse may be, whatever the reasoning may be, as long as it's done for administrative purposes, or that it's just easier to organize, or it's something, it's like a system to work in, there's no issue with that. Where does the problem come in, as the Sheikh says? When, one, it becomes the goal that you need to achieve this, and if you don't achieve this, something's wrong with you. If you don't do this, then you're weak in Iman. If you don't do this, then you're committing haram. That's when it's problematic. That's when it's problematic and dangerous, because you've taken it from a means. And the means in the Sharia, I find the bab al-wasa'il wasi'. These are usuli principles. When it comes to usul al-fiqh and matters in general, you have al-wasa'il and you have al-ghayat. The wasa'il are the means to achieve something. The ghaya is what you want to achieve. The ghaya is usually quite strict, that it's from the Quran and Sunnah, and the way is shown us in the Quran and Sunnah, and that's it. The wasila to achieve that is, generally speaking, quite flexible. The wasila to achieve it is quite flexible. For example, okay, I was going to use one example, but that's a sensitive issue, so we won't mention it. But a simpler example, the ghaya, for example, is making the adhan, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, the adhan. This is the ghaya that you need to make the adhan. The wasila, and so through the adhan, the muaddin wants to get his voice out to as much people as possible, so that they can hear the adhan. This is the ghaya, to do the adhan, to do it properly, and to do it loud so that people can hear. Then the wasila to achieve that, the way to achieve that, in previous times, they would send, for example, on the roof of the house. Then later on, they built minarets. Then after minarets came speakers. Are any of these considered a problem or innovation? No. Why? Because they're the goal to achieve being heard by the people. So there's no problem in it. It's flexible. The goal here is to give da'wah. The way to do it is flexible. The way to give da'wah is flexible. I want to do it in the masjid 2 times a week. I want to go to people's houses. I want to go sleep in a masjid in a particular area and go give da'wah to those people. I want to do it via social media. I want to write books. The way to give da'wah is flexible. As long as the da'wah is correct, then the way to do it is quite flexible. So if there's a way to organize time or administrate the matter so that it becomes simple for a large number of people, then there's no issue, inshallah, and there's no problem with it. Just like, for example, seeking knowledge. Seeking knowledge is the goal. The way to seek knowledge is many different ways. There's reading books, there's traveling to seek knowledge, there's studying via the internet, there's going and joining an Islamic university, there's studying privately. The way to seek knowledge is vast. The way to seek knowledge is flexible, but the main goal is studying correctly. So as long as there's no, it's not made a goal. It's just the days and the weeks and the months are there. Simply administrative way, there's no problem. The second thing is that no virtue is placed on it. So it's not said, for example, if you go 3 days every month, then you'll be protected from shaitan. Example. If you go 40 days a year, then you have barakah in your rizq. If you have 4 months in a lifetime, then you're guaranteed paradise. As long as these types of things are not said, then it'll be, it's okay, it's not a problem, inshallah. The main thing I advise the brothers that are around Jamaat al-Tabligh is that just don't make an obligation. Do not make that if a person goes, he's done the right thing. And if he doesn't go, then his iman is weak, or he's not proper, or he's not giving time to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, etc. Don't do that. These are the main things. Okay, if a person wants to go sleep in the masjid for 2 days, because that's the weekend, that's what he has, no problem. A person wants to go for 4 months to study and to give da'wah, no issue, inshallah. Now, as long as there's no virtue attached to it, and to keep it open in general is better. Wallahu alam. But because of organizational purposes, we understand that one system usually works better than everyone doing their own thing. Making rounds in the neighborhood has no basis in the religion, page 105. See the title and then see the answer, inshallah. Point 105. In neighborhoods that have a masjid, some members of Jamaat al-Tabligh make rounds asking people to come to the masjid, claiming that they are applying one of the practices of the Messenger ﷺ and his companions radiallahu ta'ala anhum. What is the Islamic ruling regarding this practice? The Shaykh rahimahullah replies, and if there's any questions, brothers and sisters, then please feel free to leave them in the comment section, and inshallah azza wa jal, we will take them, because I understand that it's a sensitive topic, especially because we're mentioning a specific group. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this is part 5. And from part 1, it was try to make it clear that we're speaking in a general sense, and we're not applying our words on specific individuals, and that when we get to some specifics like we are today about Jamaat al-Tabligh, that things are not taken out of context and things are not misunderstood. So if anyone has anything that they want clarification on, then please ask, and inshallah azza wa jal, we'll get to them. The Shaykh rahimahullah replies, if what they are doing is a means of achieving a goal, which is encouraging people to pray in the masjid, then we have discussed this in the previous question. As to them doing that practice, thinking that the Prophet ﷺ and his companions applied it, I know of no precedent from the authentic Sunnah. Whoever claims that this is from the Sunnah, then he must present proof to support his claim, and if he does, we will accept it from him and apply the same practice, inshaAllah. So, the Shaykh rahimahullah is saying that from what he knows, there's no authentic narration or even weak narration to say that the Prophet ﷺ would go and visit the people's houses and call them to the masjid. Jayyid. Does that make it haram? It doesn't make it haram. Why? Because what you want to do is give da'wah, and this is a means for you to give da'wah. If you want to go to the people's houses and knock on their doors and invite them to the masjid, by all means feel free to do it, and inshallah azza wa jalla you'll be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But where is there a problem when you say the Prophet ﷺ done this, the Prophet ﷺ used this approach, or this is from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? That's when it becomes problematic. So again, al-ghayat wal-wasa'il, the goals and how to and means to achieve the goals. The ghayat are usually very strict, and the wasa'il are usually flexible in how they're gone about. And as we always say, the more we learn, the more these things become clearer and apparent to us, and the more things are clearer and apparent to us, the more we know our way forward. And this is applicable not just to different groups or to our own Islamic knowledge, but even life in general. There are so many, subhanAllah, things that are confusing in our times, where once you know how to live your life Islamically, you will inshallah have no problems. And I'll finalize with a parable on all of these matters that make it very clear. The more you seek knowledge, the more you know. Imagine you're in a very dark forest, or in Australia you have bushes. You're in a bush and it's extremely dark, like tonight. Now you look out your window, you can't even see anything. You don't know anything around you. You don't know where to go. You put your hand in front of your face, you can't see it. Why? Because it's too dark. You don't know right and wrong. You got no idea where to go. You're stuck. You're scared. You're worried. You're anxious. You don't know what to do. Imagine at that time you had, mashallah, a very good flashlight, and you turn it on and everything becomes lit around you. What happens? Automatically the fear is gone. Automatically the anxiety is gone. Automatically your path becomes clear. Automatically you're not as worried because you can see if there's any danger around you. And alhamdulillah, you're able to move forward. This is the difference between a person who lives in this life without proper Islamic knowledge and between a person who Allah Azza wa Jalla has blessed him with that knowledge. He's able to see very clearly what's right, what's wrong, and how to move forward. And this is what we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with. Beneficial knowledge. Beneficial knowledge about our religion, beneficial knowledge about our world and how to go about it, beneficial knowledge about ourselves, beneficial knowledge about our families. We need beneficial knowledge, and we need to ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to give us this beneficial knowledge and to save us from non-beneficial knowledge. Because wallahi, dear brothers and sisters, people are unfortunately dealing nowadays with, especially in lockdown, with information overload, and it's really affecting a lot of people, Wallahu musta'an. And again, our stress, and you have to keep resisting and repeating. The more you know Islamically, the more principles you know how to apply properly, the happier you're going to be, and the clearer and easier your life is going to become. I don't believe there are any questions. With that, we finalize and we say subhanaka wa hamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.